Now, just today in the Hill, there was an article which basically has been pointed out things that I was pointing out all last week. That there's basically two factions now in the government, pro and anti-UFO factions now have formed in the government, and it doesn't seem to be a partisan thing as regards Republican or Democrat or anything like that. I mean, it seems like there's some Republicans and Democrats. It actually seems like the people in Congress want to move forward on this. But it seems like there's a faction within the Pentagon itself, and Majestic 12, whatever you want to call it, within the government itself, that they're fighting amongst each other. One seems to want to get the truth out, the other one wants to pull back and let's pretend there's nothing to it, and let's pretend everyone who sees UFOs is just high on marijuana and things like that. So this was an article. It was written by Marek von Reinenkampf, an opinion contributor for The Hill, and it says, pro and anti-UFO factions in government. It wouldn't be the first time. Let's read some of this article. It says, shortly before the release of the second government report on unidentified flying objects in as many years, dueling narratives emerged in the media. A New York Times article poured cold water on theories of alien visitation and the extraordinary technology alluded to in a 2021 report on unidentified aerial phenomena. Citing government officials, the Times pointedly downplayed recent military UAP incidents as foreign drones, balloons, or airborne trash. A Daily Mail article, in contrast, struck a remarkably different tone. Among several eyebrow-raising quotes, one source sharply criticized the Office of the Director of National Intelligence colleagues, stating they don't want to talk about UAP because they really, really don't know what the hell they are. The Daily Mail's sources disclosed several key details about the report prior to its release, including that the United States government cannot explain more than 150 UFO encounters reported over the past year. In short, competing factions appear to be vying for control of the UAP narrative. If this is indeed the case, history is repeating itself. Now, before we go on, this history is repeating itself. This is something that happened in the 50s, and it gets into this. This was a very well in-depth article. I really appreciate that. It's nice to see that The Hill's it's a mainstream outlet. A lot of people read this. A lot of people in Washington read it. And it's interesting that they have something like this in here. And actually, it's nice that they're going through the history of this because it's happened. This has happened before. This what's happening right now is something that happened before. It's very possible that there's a chance. I mean, I don't think it's I don't want to see it happening, right? But there's a chance that this thing could go back into the dark ages again, where it's just basically stigmatized. I mean, there's always that chance. I in one way, I think that's a small chance, right? I think it's too late. I think for the most part, Pandora's box has been opened and it's over. But you just don't know about how power works. When you have power, and you have power in the media, when you have control of the mainstream media, basically the mainstream media, I mean, you're big companies, and they all work in concert with corporations and the military industrial complex. So yeah, I mean, the only voices talking about UFOs in the future could possibly end up being independent voices, and that will be sad. That would be a sad thing to see that happen again. I really felt. It still feels like there's a strong push, like this is going to be it, like we're moving toward the end of this. But at the same time, you have to see what's going on in the past week and a half here. It's been scary thinking that looks like there's forces out there that are trying to put this back in Pandora's box, and we'll see if it happens. Anyway, let's continue with the article here. It says, from 1951 to 1953, Captain Edward Ruppelt served as the first director of Project Blue Book, the Air Force's 2-decade long UAP investigation. Ruppelt, widely regarded as an effective and objective investigator-manager, was genuinely perplexed by the UFO phenomenon. As recounted in his 1956 book, Ruppelt frequently found himself caught between two bitterly divided factions. All through intelligence circles, Ruppelt wrote, people had chosen sides on UFOs. According to Ruppelt, a 1948 Air Force intelligence assessment came to the remarkable conclusion that UAP were interplanetary. And this is just going to stop there for a second. This is what I talked about before, that assessment that was called the estimate of the situation, which ended up pretty much getting buried. The higher ups would have no part of that. And anyway, let's continue. It says here, the report worked its way up into the higher echelons of the Air Force, but was kicked back by Air Force Chief of Staff General Hoyt Vandenberg for lack of hard proof. Facing intense pressure to resolve the UAP conundrum, Ruppelt wrote, the people on the UFO project then tried a new hypothesis. UFOs don't exist. Intelligence analysts rapidly learned that a quick, snappy, it was a balloon, satisfied their superiors. Easy answers to perplexing high-quality UAP reports got recognition, and feathers were stuck in caps from Air Force Intelligence Headquarters up to the Pentagon. As a result, Ruppelt writes, many analysts jumped on the anti-UFO bandwagon. At the same time, a stubborn pro-saucer faction remained convinced that the UFOs were interplanetary spaceships. Others weren't quite as bold and just believed that a good deal more should be known about the UFOs. According to Ruppelt, those in the pro-saucer camp weren't a bunch of nuts or crackpots. They ranged down through the ranks from generals and top-grade civilians. On the outside, their views were backed up by civilian scientists. Beyond heated disagreements, the two competing UFO factions sought to influence the media. Ruppelt describes a two-part 1949 article on UAP that had considerable effect on public opinion. It was the Air Force officially reporting on UFOs for the first time. Just like the recent New York Times piece, the 1949 article casually admitted that a few UFO sightings couldn't be explained. But, as Ruppelt wrote, the reader didn't have much chance to think about this fact because 99% of the story was devoted to the anti-saucer side of the problem. It was the typical negative approach. Boy, let me just stop there. Isn't that how it is? I mean, isn't that how it's been so many times over the years? You know, you get a little tidbit in the mainstream, and then for the most part, there's absolutely zero proof. There's no proof whatsoever. The Air Force looked into the Roswell incident, and it was just a mogul balloon, and the bodies that people saw were actually dummies dropped from high altitudes in 1953 and not 1947. I mean, and then everyone just goes away. Then it was even though independent researchers had interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people, first and second-hand witnesses associated with Roswell, and who told a completely different story. None of them saw a balloon, right? But yet we all go by the mainstream story, the Air Force version. Isn't it just sad? Isn't it sad how this works? I mean, basically, who's ever in power, basically, whatever the truth is they want you to believe, that's what we go by. That's how it works. Right? Even though the truth is right in front of you, you know, it's right there. All the evidence has been put down in different books and different documentaries, different film clips. I mean, there's just so much evidence out there. It's amazing, but yet we still have this. For some reason, we can't get the word out to the public because, you know, the final say comes from the top, and that's just how the cookie crumbles, unfortunately. And a lot of us know this, but a lot of people are just gullible, and they just have. They just can't see it. They can't see through it. Anyway, I'll continue here a little bit with this article. It says, of note, the article started out by psychologically conditioning the reader against UFOs. By the time the reader gets to the meat of the article, he feels like a rich, full-blown jerk for ever thinking about UFOs. Critically, Ruppelt was continually being told to tell the media about the sighting reports we've solved. Don't mention the unknowns. With noteworthy parallels, the recent New York Times piece focuses almost exclusively on resolved UAP cases. Importantly, it also offers explanations for two well-known UFO videos recorded by a U.S. Navy fighter pilot in 2015. Citing Pentagon calculations, the Times article states that the object in one video, the Go Fast, is moving at only about 30 miles per hour. But if these calculations are identical to those long promoted by UFO debunkers, the Pentagon has some explaining to do. No fewer than 4 aviators, including a pilot airborne during the Go Fast encounter, agree that a key figure in the calculation is likely not very good data. If the number is miscalculated or otherwise significantly off the mark, the explanation for the Go Fast UFO video puts forth in the Times article is invalidated. In another video known as Gimbal, an object appears to spin or rotate as it skims over clouds. According to the New York Times sources, the object's apparent rotation is an artifact of the camera. But this is a remarkable feat of misdirection. The rotation is a red herring. The gimbal encounter is fascinating because, as noted aerospace engineer Steve Justice explains, the object travels at high altitude with no discernible wings or means of propulsion. Importantly, the Navy aircrew that recorded the video maintained a stable radar lock on the object. In this regard, knowing the distance between the object and the jet that recorded the video allows UAP sleuths and engineers like Justice to establish the UFO's perplexing lack of wings or obvious means of propulsion. But that's not all. Earlier this year, I spoke with a senior engineer intimately familiar with the optical system that recorded the gimbal video. He explicitly disagreed that the rotation observed in the video is an artifact of the camera system. An active-duty FA-18 weapons systems officer who uses the system on a near-daily basis disagreed as well. Perhaps most importantly, 4 meticulous geometrical reconstructions of the gimbal encounter show that the object's rotation matches its flight path. This is a particularly significant blow to the theory put forth in the New York Times piece. If the government stands by these quick, snappy explanations for the gimbal and go fast videos, it must show its work. Most glaringly, the Times article offers no explanation for the best-known UFO incident in recent years. In 2004, 4 naval aviators observed a tic-tac-shaped object exhibit extraordinary flight characteristics off the coast of Southern California. Now, let's just stop there and sort of go back to the gimbal video. You know, debunker Mick West has been on Twitter ever since this thing came out. He's always trying to debunk it. And basically, the New York Times article or the Pentagon, somebody in the Pentagon basically using his theory, right? But here you see other theories by other people saying it's totally ridiculous. It's not true. So everything that Mick West is saying is totally false, right? He just wants to be right about everything. He has no real explanation for anything. He never talks about the fact that there's no visible means of propulsion on the gimbal video, on the gimbal object. Nothing. There's nothing there. It looks like a flying saucer. So it's just amazing, like how it's basically what the New York Times and other mainstream media outlets are trying to do on this. They're trying to manufacture consent among, just like on the mainstream news does. They try to manufacture consent, so everyone just believes in something, even though they don't believe your eyes, don't believe what you're seeing. That's what they're doing here. That's what they've been doing. They're still doing, and they're trying to do it again here. So, I mean, this could become like when if this continues like this, every time this gets brought up in the press from here on out, you'll see like people like publications like the New York Times or even on TV, you might hear them say things like, and as the Air Force has proved that the gimbal could have been, there was really nothing extraordinary about it, and then just move on like that's nothing now, when really they never really explained it. They just pretended, they just threw out some scientific gobbledygook and expect everyone to believe it, even though they're a bunch of liars like the debunker Mick West. He never solved this. None of these things have been solved. They still have no idea what they are. And you actually have other engineers out there telling you this stuff. But anyway, I'll leave the link for this article, and there's a little bit more there. But I mean, I'm really glad. It was nice to see an article like this in the Hill today because. It's sad. It's really sad what's been going on here. It's really sad the fact that, there's definitely forces at work trying to, tear this thing back down again. That's what it seems like. I don't think, I mean, there's a chance if we all sit on our laurels and don't fight back, don't complain. I mean, we need to really get on Congress. People need to start sending the letters to their Congress representatives and demanding that we rip the Band-Aid off this thing, that we keep digging deeper, force the Pentagon to start telling the truth about this stuff. Because they've been lying, and they're trying to lie again. That's what they're doing right here. They're lying again. They're trying to pull us back into the dark ages, pull us back into the 50s again. Oh, it's all crazy stuff. Oh, you must be drunk, buddy. If you saw that, maybe he's crazy. He must be psychotic. You know what? You better send that guy to a psychiatrist, or maybe have him checked out. Because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to set things up like that again. And it was pretty bad. I mean, you think about some of these Wall Street Journal letters to the editor. Some pilot who never saw one in 40 plus years as an Air Force pilot and a pilot. Him and his other pilot buddies never saw a UFO, never even talked about it. That's what he said. They're putting stuff like that in the Wall Street Journal. Because obviously somebody in the Pentagon doesn't want to talk about this, doesn't want us to talk about this anymore. And again, gets back to what I was talking about earlier. What's the reasoning for this? Why are they trying to do this? Who wants to do this? It doesn't matter what the reason is, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what these people think. I don't care what you think. You gotta tell us the truth on this. It's gonna come out one way or the other anyway someday. It's time we all know about this. We want to know what's going on. We want to know how many beings that are coming here. We want all the details about the Roswell crash and all the other UFO recovery operations that have happened over the last 75 years. We want to know everything. I'm sure we don't want to get into the reverse engineering and what you discovered there, right? But we want to know everything else. So let's get over this nonsense. Stop playing these political games with UFOs. It's just not going to work this time. I just don't. The chances of it working, the only way it's going to work is if all of a sudden this became a complete, absolute fascist dictatorship, and anybody who talks about this would be shot out in the street. That's the only way you're going to end up stopping this. So good luck with that one.